Hi everyone, and welcome to the virtual current student panel Q&A for the virtual 2024 experience event. We're really excited to have you all here, and we have some excellent panelists that will talk about their experiences at Rochester. So just to get started, let's talk about the Rochester area and what living in Rochester is like, as well as your favorite things to do around the city of Rochester.
I think Rochester is, the way I describe it to my friends, is the most Instagrammable city. That's how I like to talk about it, because there are such cool spots where you can go and have these like niche cute cafes that you can like do your homework at on the weekends if you want to like get away from the campus. And because of the free shuttle services available, we're able to get to downtown Rochester as well at no cost. So I think I genuinely appreciate that a lot about Rochester. And as for me, what I do usually on the weekend is I usually end up like doing different activities on campus, whether it be something organized through our student activity center or whether it be like a show that my friends are putting up. I usually end up doing that, but on the off weekends when I'm available, I would end up going to the museums or exploring the Rochester city area. And it's the most magical city that I've ever seen. And as someone from New York City, I don't know why I'm a little biased towards Rochester. As for the weather, it is not as bad as people make it out to be. I actually grew up in South Asia, so I was really used to a warm weather, and I thought I was gonna have a hard time adjusting, but I genuinely didn't, because it's honestly really bad 1 week out of like the entire academic year. And because of the tunnel system and obviously like bundling up with sweaters and like jackets, it doesn't really bother me as much. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Ifan and I'm a senior from Taiwan. I'm double majoring in microbiology and business. And what I love about Rochester is that if you're really into brunch, I think this is probably one of the best places to go. The brunch scene in Rochester is huge. So we have this place in Rochester called Park Ave, and it's just a row of really, really nice breakfast / lunch places where you can get really nice like omelets, really nice coffee, and other than that, coming off of what Heaney said, I'm also really into photography. So just Rochester is a really good places. There are a lot of like hidden places that you do have to go out to look for yourself, but that really brings you on an adventure throughout the city of Rochester. And that's what I think I love. That's why I think I really like Rochester.
Okay, great. Thank you all. And as you're putting your questions, you might see a couple of names, Libby and Shayna, answer your questions. Those are my admissions colleagues. They are both admissions counselors with the University of Rochester. So they are helping to answer questions as we go through this chat. So thank you, Libby and Shayna. Next, let's talk about the campus culture. So the feel of the Rochester campus, and if you could describe a quintessential Rochester student.
So yeah, when I started my college search process, I didn't quite know what kind of campus feel that I would want, in the sense of, did I want a closed campus, an open one, a big, small? But I'm really happy that I settled on Rochester. I love that our campus is contained, unlike some that you might find in inner cities. For those of you who haven't visited, we have a river on one side, a graveyard on another, and then kind of like a road that doesn't allow people. So you really do feel secluded in a campus community, which I find is great. The campus isn't that big, so from one side to another, it's probably a 15-minute walk. Into all my classes, I really enjoy that I'm able to just sort of walk to class and I don't have to catch a bus or drive. As for the typical Rochester student, I think I would describe one as just really passionate about what they're interested in. I've found that pretty much everyone, if not everyone I've met at Rochester, has something they're just really passionate about, and they want to tell you and explain it to you, and they want to share their interests, and that really allows you to understand some cool aspects of the world. And since we're such an international campus, I've met people from all over the world, and now I can say when I travel in the future that I'll have people to visit. And I've had questions about how competitive we are as a university. My dad went to a very competitive school and had always told me that he never really had his notes shared or his homework like helped with. And so that's something that I think is completely not the case at Rochester. We are very much wanting to help each other, support each other, and everyone here wants everyone to succeed. And so in classes with one where you're able to and allowed to work on stuff together, you'll see that students just really thrive off of a collaborative environment.
I second everything Lily just said. Absolutely. We are very much a collaborative environment instead of a competitive environment. We are trying to work together to make each other better people, more well-rounded, more excited to get up every morning and to dive into all different things that we're doing. And I think that the classic Rochester student is doing something that's unique. They are finding this niche for themselves, whether it's specifically academic one or maybe an extracurricular one, or some professional one outside of that. And they're diving really deep into that, and they're passionately curious. That is how I like to think of U of R students. We are passionately curious. And we like to share that with each other, and it makes for really cool late night conversations in academic buildings on campus.
All right. So I think the feel of the campus is I'm a history nerd, and I like learning more about history. So when I came to campus and I saw Rush Trees, it sort of like reminded me of those how do I explain it? Like, there's like historical feel to it. So I really like that. Like, it's modern in its buildings, but it's also like it has the older kind of like historical vibe that I always wanted from my campus. But other than that, how do you describe a typical Rochester student? The one thing I would say is that no two Rochester students are same to each other. They're very different in their like uniqueness, and I think I really love that about our campus in general, because it ensures that I get to interact with people from different backgrounds, whether it be from someone from different country or whether it be with some like completely different interests, whether it be academic or extracurricular. I think that's how I would describe a Rochester student, that we all hold to our Meliora values, but we are also very unique in our own approach.
Yeah, so coming off of what everyone said, I think at Rochester, everyone is trying to pursue what they're interested in, but despite everyone having different interests, like ultimate interests, everyone is extremely well-rounded and extremely involved in many different things around campus. So for example, you could have a Rochester student involved in multiple culture clubs, student council, and be a varsity athlete at the same time. On the other hand, another student could be involved in entrepreneurship club, MUN, or just Greek life all together at the same time. But everyone, despite being interested in one thing, is very willing to explore things outside of their field, and everyone is willing to go out of their comfort zone to do whatever that they find potentially could be interesting to them too. And I think that ultimately describing a Rochester student is just a student with very passionate desire to do their own thing, while very willing to also very open-minded and willing to discover and explore other things at the same time.
Great. So we kind of have a feel of the city of Rochester and the campus culture. So can you all talk a little bit about student life opportunities like clubs, sports, organizations, and what your weekends look like?
So yeah, before I get into that, I noticed a question about train, bus, airport, and I just wanted to quickly touch upon that. So I frequently take the train home until I bought a car this year. And so for that, it's about a 10-minute Uber right from campus, and then the train station goes just sort of across the length of New York and then to the west. The airport is probably a 5-minute Uber or Lyft, and bus station is right next to the train station. So that's again a 10-minute right in downtown Rochester. So really accessible, not that expensive of a ride, and also if you have upperclassmen friends, they can help bring you there. But as for student life and clubs, organizations, and things like that, I am involved in student government. This past year, I was chief of staff for our student government, and the year before, I was deputy speaker, actually for Leith, who was my boss. And so for that, I really enjoyed student government in high school, and I wanted to continue that into college. So I found it's a great group of students, and you're able to sort of find your niche and what you're interested in doing. You're able to run for positions. And so that is, we have a Senate and we have a class council and for each grade. And then we have sort of our president and vice president and our speaker and the rest of our leadership. So coming in as a first year, you're able to run for a Senate position or for a class council position. And so those are sort of different. Senate is more over the whole school, and class council is sort of planning programs for your specific year. Both are really great, and they plan some fun stuff, and Senate gets a lot of awesome resolutions passed and bills and things like that. So feel free to contact me if you want more information on that. I'm also involved in our Committee for Political Engagement, and so that is a nonpartisan political group on campus, and we work with all different types of groups, whether that's cultural, whether that's other political organizations on campus, just to educate students on different civic engagement things, but also just to have different events on topics that are relevant. I'm also involved in club sports, and I saw a question about that, so I thought I'd touch upon it. I'm involved in women's club soccer, and I'm also involved in intramural soccer. I'd say the time commitment is what you make of it. So for club sports, some of our club sports have gone to nationals and some haven't, and that sort of just depends on the year and the team. You have a coach for most of the teams, and you have practice probably twice a week, and then 1 to 2 games on the weekend for the season that you play. I found that it was really manageable. I played Premier Soccer in high school, and this was probably even less of a time commitment than that. And again, practices and games aren't mandatory, but in order to play in games, you do need to go to practices. As for intramural sports, I really love them. I have sort of a goal that I want to win an intramural championship, and I was really close this year. The team I played with got to like the semifinals, and we lost in the last round. It's really competitive, at least the soccer is, and I think that's so fun because you just go on a weeknight and have a team with your friends. I started actually just sort of joining the random guy games or games of guys that were going on, and that was really fun because playing with another people you don't know, I just think is really exciting. As for what else is there, sports, I'll just a little bit more and then let the rest of the people speak. We're a Division III, and I found that I really enjoy knowing people on the sports teams. I know probably a handful of people, if not more, on every sports team, and I like that when we go to our games, I'm able to cheer on people that I either room with or have class with or just see, and that's really fun. We don't have huge sports games, but it just makes it more personal, and I think that's really cool. As for what we do on the weekends, I would say sleep in is probably my #1 priority because we're really busy during the week with clubs and classes and meetings. Also, meetings are on the weekends for things you're involved in. There are parties. I did see questions about that. You're more than welcome to find that if you're interested in it. There's also really cool activities that the school puts on, that be movie-like screenings. I've been in a lecture hall where they have sort of just a movie that recently was released, and you get to watch it for free with your friends on a huge screen, and that was really fun. Also, I've had Italian cooking nights. So I'm involved in, or I take Italian, and that's something that on the weekends we'll just cook up a homemade Italian meal with the rest of our class. And that's something that I really cherish about my college experiences so far. And I'll just let everyone else take it away from here.
Awesome. So I'll just try to be brief about this, but there are about 300 clubs and student organizations on our campus, just on River campus alone. So I think it's like 91% of all of our undergraduates are involved in at least one club on campus. Chelsea's the underhead, so I think I got that one right. So what that means is that pretty much whatever you're interested in, you can join that. You can find a community of other students that are also interested in that same thing. And if there is something that you are interested in doing in terms of extracurriculars that doesn't exist on our campus yet, you're empowered to start a new club, and you can get some people together that are also passionate about that thing and start that with them. And so I've seen a lot of new clubs come up since I got here, and so many of them are so neat. And you see new communities forming on campus all the time. So I'd say much empowered to get involved with the things that we're interested in outside of class. As for myself, like Lily said, I spent most of my time at U of R in student government. So I was a student senator for my first year and second year. And then I was the speaker of the student senate. So I was the head of the legislative branch of student government when I was a junior. And then I stepped back this year because I was abroad last semester in London. But I've also been involved in a lot of different music groups on campus. I sang in a couple of choirs. This semester I was in a jazz band on campus. I did an African drumming group, West African drumming group on campus, which was really fun, and a couple of other things as well. And then also in terms of other extracurriculars, there's a lot of different jobs on campus. So I've worked as a tour guide, and then I also spend time working as a public speaking tutor on campus as well. So it kind of feels like that's an extracurricular as well.
Hello. Okay. So for me, so there was a question about like culture shock, and I feel like moving from a whole different country and coming to the US, I wanted to address that because I feel like that ties into student life. I think the biggest thing for me was that given the number of different clubs and the fact that our activities fair was the first weekend when classes started, allowed me to dive right into it, which meant that I did not, even if it was like a culture shock, like, wow, different, it still wasn't as hard for me to navigate that feeling because I got involved and I got to know people, because I think that's how you get over it. Like, you interact with the people around it. And that's what I did. And for me, I was particularly involved with debate. So I actually went to the World Debate Championship, and I also went to nationals through debate, which was like a great opportunity for me. And I had no prior experience before college. So it's an open team, so it's a walk-in team. And then I was also involved with the South Asian organization. I actually led the club 2 years. So that was a big part of my commitment. And as for other organizations, like I got to explore entrepreneurship through another club, the Meliora Launchpad, and also I got to do cheerleading in college. So that was interesting for me. I got to experience new things, and this is something that I like to say to people, that regardless of where you go to college, you should definitely try something that you've never tried before. And that was for me cheerleading and debate. I did both of those things like completely new once I came to college. As for what it looks like in terms of commitment, it honestly depends on you. The semesters where it was very academics heavy for me, I ended up not going to as many tournaments for debate, or not at all for that matter, or I didn't compete. I wasn't competitive in cheerleading, stuff like that. Or the semesters where I had a lighter semester somewhat, like where I had the typical 16 credits, I ended up competing or spending more time in these clubs activities. So that's how I handled it. And Google Calendar is going to be your best friend during college. And as you can visualize and see everything and all of your commitments, so you can, before committing to something, you can always check I've already committed to this, so I won't have the time to do this.
Yeah, so again, coming off of what everyone said, there are so many clubs on campus to join. They can range from very serious clubs like MUN, like debate, all the way to clubs like tea tasting or knitting club. Anything that you're interested in, our school has a club probably designated to that. And if you don't find anything that you're interested in, you can always start your own club. All you have to do is do some communication with our student affairs office. And personally, I am involved. The two biggest things that I do, I am involved in myself, is that I play varsity tennis. So most of my weekends we are playing games either at home, or we travel to places like Florida. We just got back from Puerto Rico before this. So we do go to a lot of places to play our matches. And I'm also involved in TASA, which is Taiwanese American Students Association, and that we just promote my culture across campus. And some things that about student life is that our school organizes big weekends. I'm sure when you come, you're going to hear a lot about Meliora Weekend, Yellow Jacket Weekend. Dandelion Day, things like that, that just bring the school all together and just hang out as a bunch. There are food trucks, there are performances, and it's just a good time on those weekends to just hang out with your friends, take a little study break from school. And I think those are the biggest things that our school offers on weekends, and just some of the commitments that all of us do outside of our academic life.
Great. So the next question we'll talk about is the Rochester curriculum and how you guys are using that curriculum. So including your majors, minors, clusters, certificates. And just so everyone knows, we will be covering next the academic life balance that the students have. So we will talk about that in just a few minutes. But first, just tell us a little bit about how you're using the Rochester curriculum.
So yeah, I found that I have a variety of interests, and in high school, I didn't love when people told me what classes I had to take, and I'm not a huge science and math person, and so for me, I just didn't enjoy those classes as much in high school, and so coming to Rochester, the curriculum is one of the main reasons I chose to come here. Our open curriculum allows you to explore classes and find classes you really genuinely are interested in taking. I found that every semester so far and every class I've taken, I have really been interested in, and I'm excited to learn about the topic, and that's something that I really think is unique to an open curriculum. So for my major, I'm an international relations major. It's very similar to a poli-sci major, just the only difference is that we have a requirement to study abroad and a language requirement. Both of those are fairly easy to accomplish. Hopefully I'll be doing my study abroad in this following spring. As for my minors, I'm a history minor and an Italian minor. I will preface this all that I'm currently a sophomore, so I'm actually in the middle of declaring all of these right now, so they're not technically official yet, but I'm planning on doing all of these. And a history minor is 6 classes within the history major, and you have to have breadth within it. And an Italian minor is 5 classes within the Italian department. So what I like about each of these is that I'm able to have classes within other topics as well. And our cluster system is something that I haven't jumped into yet for my natural sciences, but I'll be doing that in the following years. And so I love that I'm able to sort of explore all across the board, whether that be in the social sciences, humanities, or natural sciences. So, yeah.
So I'll get to the Rochester curriculum question in just a second, but I did see that someone asked about how the food is on campus, and I just really quickly want to answer that because this is something that I'm very passionate about. The food on campus, I've loved. There's 2 main dining halls on campus, and both of those have, in my humble opinion, absolutely outstanding food. A few years ago, we were ranked number 5 in the nation for best campus food. So over 70% of all of our produce on campus comes from New York State. And that's something that I know the dining services team believes very strongly in, sourcing from local growers and farmers. And you can tell that in the quality of the food as well. I think that's really reflected. And so in general, dining services is very forward thinking. They come up with all kinds of creative stuff. You're never gonna see the same food day after day. They have a really comprehensive, wide-ranging menu of things that's changing all the time. There's also a lot of different stations at each dining hall for people that have different types of dietary restrictions and whatnot, whether it's the kosher station or the allergen-free station, which just cooks without like the top 8 food allergens and other things like that. So, and lots of good vegetarian options as well. So, so getting to the question about the Rochester curriculum. So again, I'm a double major in economics and political science. So those are both within the 3 divisions at the school, which are natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. Both of my majors are in the social sciences, which means that the way the Rochester curriculum works, I have to then take a cluster in natural sciences and a cluster in humanities as well. So each cluster is 3 classes. And so I'm doing my natural sciences cluster in applied mathematics, and I did my humanities cluster in, what was the full name of it? It was kind of a long name, but it's basically communications. So for that one, I took a class on public speaking, one on peer tutoring for speech, and then also one on presidential rhetoric, which was really interesting. Just by this guy who used to be a speechwriter for one of the past US presidents. Very interesting dude. Anyway, I don't have a minor, but what I will say about the curriculum is that it does definitely encourage you. I mean, obviously it encourages you to get outside of your bubble and your comfort zone within your, because you have to do those clusters. I know for me, it also encouraged me to get off campus as well. There's a lot of classes that have opportunities for you to do community service and volunteer work out in the city of Rochester, which I've tried to take advantage of a little bit at school. So I got to do a couple of internships around Rochester for credit at the school. And so that I found to be really exciting.
All right. Hi. So someone asked what is exactly a cluster. So I want to explain that before I dive into like explaining my academic experience at Rochester. So basically, we do not have any required general education courses. What we do ask students is, because we want to make sure that students have a comprehensive education, is that you delve into all three of the different academic areas that we offer, which is social sciences, natural sciences, and humanities. So what we ask students is that you major in one of these academic fields, and then you take two clusters. One in, so for example, I have a major in natural sciences. I did a cluster in social sciences and humanities. And the way the cluster works is that you take 3 classes from those 2 different academic areas. So in total, 6 classes on top of your major, and that forms one cluster. And so like that's 2 clusters, sorry. So 6 classes, 2 cluster, 1 cluster is 3 classes. I hope that sort of makes sense. I don't know if it was too confusing. So my clusters were America and the world in for my social science, and for my humanities, I did legal studies. And for me, I came in thinking I wanted to be an engineer, and I wanted to ensure that like I become an engineer, and I'm still going to become an engineer, but like at the end of the day, I realized that my interests were a little different comparatively, and I was able to change from biomedical engineering to engineering sciences my senior year, which I don't think would have been possible if it wasn't for the fact that Rochester has an open curriculum. And I was able to do that simply because my professors always made sure, my advisors always made sure whatever course I took amounted to something. So I was able to like take courses in economics. I was able to take classes in legal studies. I'm currently taking 2 religion courses, and one of them actually counts towards my cluster. So so I was able to like explore these kind of different academic areas that I was always interested in. Like I mentioned earlier, I am a history nerd, so I really do enjoy taking historical classes or historical background classes. So I was able to take that for political science. I was able to do that for religion. And so yes, that's how I experienced my academic experience. There's one question about how many classes do you need to take if you have a major and a minor in order to be on track of graduation. I think I have heard of my friends overloading by one course, which is like 20 credits instead of the typical 16 credits. And they have like, a lot of my friends have double majors, and then 1 major, 3 minors or something like that. They're all like way too talented.
Yeah, so I think most of them already talked a lot about the Rochester curriculum. So I'll just briefly talk about my major. So I'm a double major in microbiology and business on a pre-veterinary track. And so my microbiology major, of course, fulfills the natural science division cluster. My business major fulfills the social sciences cluster. And for my humanities, I decided to, as I said before, I'm very into photography. So I decided to do my cluster in production. So I got to take film classes, photography classes, and even an architecture class in that production cluster. And I know a lot of you guys are gonna come in as pre-meds. And just like as an advice, like if you plan to do pre-med and you become a biology major, most of your prereqs for med school will be included in your biology major. So you guys don't have to worry too much about taking or worrying about not being able to take your prereqs before applying to medical school. Also, if you do want to be pre-med, you also don't have to major in biology, despite that being probably the most popular major for eventually going to med school. I know a lot of my friends decided to major in business, major in engineering. As long as they fulfill the prereqs required to med school, I don't think there is a necessary need to also major in biology. So, and I know that our school is very, often people think of our school and they think it's very STEM focused, but when you come here, you realize that it's very well-rounded. People are interested in all three divisions: natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. So yeah, I just think that this open curriculum is very suitable, since I know that a lot of high schoolers coming out still aren't sure of what they want to do. And I think Rochester gives an opportunity for everyone to explore that.
Okay, great. Thank you all. I'll just quickly highlight a couple of things about the curriculum. It is sometimes a little bit difficult to understand. And so just to give a quick overview, about 45% of our students will double major will graduate with a double major. So you heard a couple of panelists talk about double majors, minors, things like that. So it is very common to do at Rochester. And then also, if you're interested in finding out more about what clusters are available, there is a cluster search engine. So if you Google University of Rochester cluster search engine, you'll see it come up, and there's over 200 clusters available across the 3 disciplines, so lots to choose from. And then if you have further questions about the curriculum, feel free to either send something in the Q&A box and we'll try to answer it, or at the end, I'll share our contact information. We can talk more about it then if you still have questions. So can we talk about how your academic life, how the balance is in terms of what are the classes like, how much time do you spend studying, and also like class sizes, if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for me, I found that my class sizes, I'll start with that, have pretty much been very small. That is specific to my major and minors. The largest class I've had was an intro class for political science, and that was probably 75 people about. But majority of my classes have been under 20 people, and I've even had a class that was 3 people. And so for that, I've really gotten to know my professors. Like I mentioned earlier, the Italian cooking nights are something that I really enjoy. And also I've been invited along with the rest of my class to professor's house. So I do think that professor-student relationships are really good here. And even in those larger classes, you do have TAs or workshop leaders that allow you to better understand in a smaller setting the content. As for my workload, it's definitely a lot more than high school, but it's manageable in the sense that you have more time than you think. When I'm home, I'm spending time with my family, I'm doing other things, I'm doing chores, whatever it is. And at college, you kind of have your own way to organize your schedule, and that's filling it with classes. For me, just sort of I'll give you this semester's weekly schedule. On Mondays, I don't start until 2 and I go until 6. On Tuesdays, I only have 1 class, and that's from 11 to 12:30. And then Wednesdays are the same as Monday, 3 classes. And for Friday, I have 1 class at 3:25. So for me, I found that I'm not really a morning person, and so I put them later in the day. And there's a decent amount of flexibility. The earliest we have classes is 9 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 9:40, I think, on Tuesday, Thursday. And so that's something that allows you to sort of really block your time. As for work and like student social life balance, I found it's really nice to make sure that you are studying, and I have my favorite spots on campus, which I'll get into, but also taking time for yourself to spend time with your friends to make sure that you're not getting overwhelmed. That did take me a little bit to get into the rhythm of, because I was very focused on succeeding academically, but then as I transitioned and as you meet people through orientation and clubs and on your floor, and your first year RAs will do a good job of trying to get you to mix with your floors, that you'll find on the weekends you'll be in the library, but you're also with your friends, and that kind of turns into a social spot as well. My favorite spot in the library is probably Wells Brown Room, if you do end up coming or visiting. It's just a really quiet place with comfy couches. You'll frequently find people napping on, and I have a lot of reading for homework, like books worth of reading, and so I just go there and kind of sit all day and read. But I like to switch throughout pretty much all of the study spaces because I don't like to stay in one place for too long. That's it.
So I'd echo a bunch of what Lily said in that college definitely, even during your first year, it is going to be the next level up from high school. There's a significant amount more work, but two things. One, what Lily said is that you don't have like your school life and then your home life. Your school life is your home life once you get to college. And I don't mean that to sound like, I don't mean that to sound intimidating or anything. It's just that all of a sudden you can use all of your time to dedicate to what you want. You know, you're working, you design your own schedule and you get to work by that. And so that's great in that you don't have to worry about what your parents want to, when your parents want to eat dinner, or what your siblings are doing, or anything else. But it also means that you're going to be you're going to need to budget your more carefully than in the past, because you're the only one that is kind of responsible for that once you get to college. So, but it's also a different type of workload as well. It's a lot less busy work I found in high school. You know, you're not doing many worksheets and stuff like that. It's a lot more reading books, reading large sections of textbooks, just trying to take good notes, or writing a paper. Or if you're doing natural sciences, you're doing a lab report or something like that. And so that's going to be taking up a lot more of your time than, and there's less like little bits and pieces of homework here and there. So take that for what you will. In terms of my class sizes, so again, I'm doing both of my majors in the social sciences. I think my class sizes are usually, on average, probably around 20 students. So probably about the same as what I had in high school, actually, in terms of class sizes. I've had classes as small as 4 students. And I think the largest class I had was probably 80 or 90 students, and that was just like a big intro lecture type thing. And so the neat thing is that as you go, and the more in-depth within your studies that you go, within your specific field of study, your class sizes do get smaller because you're studying something that is more specific to just a few people instead of a lot of people. So that's definitely something to look forward to. And so it's nice to have a lot of one-on-one work with professors, and they definitely do make themselves available as much as they can. Every professor does office hours at least once a week. Some of them do that more. And I know every professor that I've ever had is very open to just, you can shoot them an email, set up a time to meet, even outside of their office hours if that's an inconvenient time for you. And now that we're doing classes over Zoom, actually, I found it still really easy to talk to and meet with professors, and that I can email them. We can set up a Zoom meeting the day after I email them, and we can chat for as long as we need and talk about whatever we need to talk about. So they're definitely open to working with students one-on-one. I think I'll leave it there.
There's a question about how big are the engineering classes. So for me, initially my class was around 100, 120 students for my 101 course. And then a lot of people realized what their true interests were, or what they were genuinely interested in. So they decided to move to a different major or stuff like that. So initially we had like I said, 100 or 120 students, but eventually it trickled down to, I think, around 50. But then they talked about like workshops and office hours, so that's your chance to like interact with your professors, and obviously it's different for each major. So like I said, I'm an engineering major, but both my clusters, I do think that I was able to build a relationship with all of the professors that I wanted to build a relationship with, simply because I was going to their office hours, I was emailing them, and I was talking to them after class and stuff like that. And okay, so let's talk about how I balance my social life. For me, the biggest thing was that I'm a student first, and I'm there to make sure that I keep my studies at check, but also I need to make sure that I'm also doing other like fun stuff to like get a break from classes and stuff like that. So for me, it was always about like looking at my calendar, and I know the thing that I did for sure was that first day of classes, when I've got my syllabus, I would put down all the exam dates on my calendar to make sure that the weekend prior I was taking out time to like study or just take a breather and stuff like that. And then the weekend after, I will like take a break or like hang out with my friends and stuff like that. And for me, that was really important, that I was able to balance out my work and I was able to like handle my academics as well. I worked at the hospital, and I started working at the hospital since my, and that was like clinical experience and internship opportunity. I was able to do that starting my sophomore year, but I have had friends who started doing that the beginning of their freshman year, or like as soon as they have expressed interest, their advisor was able to like put them in contact with someone who will be able to help them. So that was important. And I think at the end of the day, like Leif said, we are supposed adults at this point, and we have to be like careful about how and what we're doing. At the end of the day, it is all about time management. It is also about prioritizing yourself first and do things that are important for you and you think will be good for you.
Yeah, so for my experience, I think one of my biggest classes was around 300 people. And that's very rare, only for very introductory classes or pre-req classes like general biology, general chemistry. But as all of them said again, your classes do get a lot smaller as you go deeper into your major. So when I delved straight into classes solely for microbiology majors, my biggest classes were only around 30 to 40 people. And some of my smallest classes in the humanities section also had only like 10 or maximum 10 people. And I think that all the professors are very willing to help here. From what I've experienced, I don't think I've had any bad professors at U of R. All of them are very like into teaching and very into like helping you reach your goals. So as long as you're not afraid to reach out to any of them, I think that they're also very much willing to help you. And just a brief point about work and social life. So again, you're here primarily to learn. You're primarily here to educate yourself and build a platform for success in the future. But in the end, everyone wants to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of social life. And I think for us, a lot of that happens in the library. We spend a lot of time in the library just chatting up random people as you walk through Rushree's library, as you walk through Carlson. So I think despite being in a work environment, it could also be seen as a social environment because that's where we do a lot of our interacting with each other. So that's something I really do miss a lot right now.
Great, thank you all so much. The next question that we'll ask, I'm seeing them come through the chat box as well, are about research and internship opportunities as well as campus jobs. So if you could all just talk about how you're experiencing each of those different areas on campus.
So I am a tour guide, or a Meridian as we call them on campus. And I'm also sort of my area of research that I'm doing sort of fell into my lap, I guess. I work with the library to document the portraits on campus. And so I'm the only student that does it this year. And what I do is just document the gender and racial discrepancies between our mostly white male portraits, and hopefully in the next year or two, get those changed and more equalized. So for that, it's been really eye-opening to see what we have, and that yes, we do have women on campus, but it does a lot of Susan B. Anthony and what the dorm names are and what they are named after. So that's been really cool to learn about, and that's also a job for me. As for research, I found that it's fairly easy to get from everyone that I've talked to. I've had a professor ask in class who wanted to be part of her research, and that was really cool. I never ended up getting to it, but it was something that I enjoyed, that she literally just asked us and we went to her office the next day when we were interested. One thing that I wanted to answer, because it was in the chat box, was about shopping around for classes. That's something that I didn't realize was a thing until I came to college. But yes, it does happen. Students will register for more classes than they're anticipating to take. So you'll register for 6 classes, but you actually want to take 4, and you'll see which ones you like the best for the first week. So it probably takes a week or 2 until your classes are the class size that it's going to be. And for that, you just drop the class within the add drop period. That's it.
So for me, in terms of jobs and internships, so again, I have 2 jobs on campus. So I also work as a tour guide with Lily, and Kimi as well, and then I also work as a public speaking tutor, and that's with our writing, speaking, and argument program. So there's a bunch of both speaking and writing tutors that work there, and you basically take a class to get trained in doing that, and then you can become a tutor. So if anyone's interested in that, it's a great program that they have. Regarding internships, so we have a career and internship center on campus called the Gwen M. Green Center for career and internship, and then there's a few more words in that name, but it's the Career and Internship Center. Sorry, Chelsea, I blew that one. So I know that they've definitely helped me get put cover letters together, expand my own professional network to help get internships and jobs, get my resume together, make sure it's and help me make it look good, make sure it's updated and everything, and organized the way it needs to be. And I think because of, definitely at least partially because of their help, I've had internships every single summer after each year of college. So for my first year, I was in Washington, D.C. working with a campaign office. After second year, I was working for the New York State Assembly. And then this past year, I was working both for a New York State Senator and for a U.S. Congressman. And then this coming spring, after I graduate, I think I'm going to be entering that congressman's office as a speechwriter. So definitely those resources on campus help you both getting internships and securing jobs and whatnot. There was one other question, kind of unrelated to this, that I really just want to quickly answer about what the dorm buildings are like on campus. So when you're a first year, almost all first years will be put into a double, which means that you are sharing one room with one other person. And so the school provides most of the furniture and whatnot in there, and then you can bring like a microwave, mini fridge, all your bedding and cool posters and whatever. Those rooms, notably compared to a lot of other schools I know that I toured when I was looking at schools, are much more spacious. It doesn't feel cramped. There are big windows, and I was very pleased with that. So I didn't feel like the walls were like closing in around me at all. After that, your options for dorms open up a lot. So a lot of people move into suite style living, where you might have a suite of either 2, 3, 4, or I think up to 6 people in different buildings on campus, in different parts of campus. So in that situation, you get your own single room usually, and then you share like a kitchen and living room type area with the other people in your suite.
My experience in terms of like campus jobs and internships was really interesting, because my freshman year, I didn't think I wanted to work on campus, and I just like wanted to focus on academics. But then at the end of it, I was like, I wanted to get more experience under my belt. So I started working as a Meridian, which is like a tour guide. So I actually worked with all 3 of them as a Meridian. I'm also an interviewer. So if any of you are international, and I interviewed you guys, so hi. So I interviewed prospective students for like the undergrad admissions. Along with that, I also work as a research assistant at the hospital. So that is more related towards my major. And that was what my research experience was more or less like. In terms of internship, I always knew that I wanted to like become an engineer, like something similar to that. So I wanted to get into experience in terms of that, but then the Gwen M. Green Career Center told me that there's this position open, why don't you apply? It's not like a typical engineering position, but it's similar, so why don't you apply? So I applied, and then I realized working there, and it was in South Asia, so that was really interesting too, that I was able to like go back home and like work and get some like industry experience. But that also made me realize that my interest wasn't like typical engineering, and I wanted to become an analyst. So that was really cool for me. And our career center will definitely help you navigate all of those things. They have like walk-in hours where you can go and like edit your resume, or you can have them read over your cover letter. And now it has become like or if you want to like have a sit-down conversation about your like perspectives, they'll also have that kind of like ability, like counseling hours where you can meet with the counselor. someone just asked me, how did I get my job as a research assistant at the hospital? So there are two ways that you can do this. The first one is there is a established program called the Rochester Undergraduate Research Fellowship Program, URPP, UR Fellowship Program, placement program, Rochester Placement Program, Undergraduate Research Placement Program. Sorry, I totally forgot what it was called. And you submit a Google form with all of your interest on it, and then the office will reach out to you to see what exactly, like, how can they match you with a professor, and the professors will also post about their availability. So you can go through that program, or you can just email your professor. So for me, that was what happened, that I emailed the professors that I really wanted to work with, and they suggested that I come in for a meeting, and I chatted with them and explained to them like what my interests were, and that's how we went about it. So
Yeah, so other than being a tour guide, I think my other two campus jobs are primarily catered toward what I want to do in the future. So my first opportunity was working with naked mole rats. So basically, I just maintained their daily like well-being and like fed them almost every day. And my other job is, of course, like me working as a research assistant in the medical center, primarily working with RNA. And I think that our school also has a job, like a platform for different like programs or departments to post their like opportunities that they have. So that's how I got my research assistant job. That's how I got my naked mole rat position job. So yeah, I think that's a good way to find jobs on campus. And I'm running a little short on time, so I think I'll just cut myself off there.
Sorry, we are running a little bit short on time. So I'm going to share my screen with some contact information, and we'll go a couple minutes over. You can feel free to leave if you need to leave, just to give the panelists a chance to end with any comments they have that they want to say before we finish up the session. So I'm just going to share this page. You're seeing here how to contact your admissions counselor. So if you're interested in talking to the counselor that's in charge of the territory that you live in, or that you go to school at, I should say. So for example, I'm in charge of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Maine. So if you go to high school in one of those states, I would be your admissions counselor. And so that is how you're going to contact them. And then you can also always email the admissions email address right here at admit@admissions.rochester.edu, and someone will get back to you. So I'm going to leave this screen up as we have all of our panelists, and with just telling us maybe why they chose Rochester, or how Rochester stood out in their decision process, and any other comments they want to tell you before they sign off.
So I chose Rochester for probably two main reasons, and that would be the people and the curriculum. And so for me, the people really stood out in the sense that we're inviting and all, like I said earlier, interested in different things, but passionate about them. And really just diverse. And that's something that I enjoyed when I went on campus. Unfortunately, if you haven't toured already, you won't be able to see it yet, but we have an amazing flag lounge that displays the flags of all the students that currently go there. And that's something that really reminds you how diverse and international we are, and I like that. Also, I really like the size of our campus. I looked at pretty small liberal arts colleges, and this was the largest one I looked at, and I am so glad that I chose it because it feels small and close-knit, which is a good thing for me, but it also isn't so small where you know every single person. I find that pretty much everywhere I go, I know someone, but I also don't know someone, and that's something that I really enjoy, and I've been able to meet a lot of great people.
I know for me, when I was touring colleges, when I was a junior and senior in high school, I was always struggling because every college I would visit or communicate with people from would always tell me like, oh, well, we're the best school because of X, Y, and Z. And, you know, but each school uses different metrics to tell you why they're the best school in the world. So after visiting a ton of schools, I should say getting bragged to a ton of schools with my mom, but, you know, it's fine. I wasn't really sure what actually was the best school for me because each school would find some way to communicate that they were the best school in the world. And it wasn't until I got to U of R that I realized that there's one single metric that you can use to really determine what the best school is for you. And that's the people that are there. Without the students and the faculty and the staff that work at and live at that school, the school is nothing but a bunch of empty buildings, right? And so the people are that school and very essence of it. And so when I got to U of R and I realized that I was surrounded by these really inspiring people that were just like kicking butt in so many different ways in so many different fields, and like excited to share those experiences and work together to become better versions of ourselves. I know it sounds cheesy, but trust me, it's true. That was when I was like, yeah, okay, that is one single metric that we can really apply to every single school, and we're looking at them. And I knew that U of R was the right spot for me for that.
I didn't actually get to tour a college, so hi everyone. We have that in similar between us. So I didn't get to tour a college, but ultimately what came down to me as to why I chose Rochester is the fact that once I got accepted, I was like one of the many students who got accepted at that point, right? And I thought that so ultimately what came down to it is like the responsiveness of the university. So I remember, and I exclusively remembered this, I emailed my admissions like counselor, like, hi, I'm so excited. I wanted to get in touch with someone from the biomedical engineering department who's also Bengali, like Bangladeshi like me. And surprisingly, they responded and gave me a contact information for a student. And I was actually able to like learn more about the program through that person. And I think that's what ultimately really helped me, which is the fact that the people were communicative and they were willing to listen to your questions and answer them. And that was one of the biggest factors. The other thing is I always wanted to go to a diverse campus. And I definitely think with our 25% student body, our international students, so that was a big pull for me, why I ended up going to Rochester, because I grew up all over the globe and I really wanted to like have that kind of like continue to have that kind of experience and meet new people. And I got that and I knew that I was going to get that in Rochester. So those are the two main reasons why I ended up choosing Rochester.
So I actually got recruited by a few schools, Division III schools up in the Northeast. And I think the biggest factor for me was coming to campus on a really sunny and like summer day where everything was just really beautiful. And this is like a scenery we don't get to see much back home in Taiwan, just a lot of green. So I think that like compared to other universities that I visited, I think the campus was the most appealing and the most beautiful to me, with a river view and just like mountains to climb around campus, or like within a 10 to 15 minute drive around campus. So I think that that was the biggest determining factor of why I ended up choosing Rochester.
Okay, great. So we've answered almost all of the questions, or possibly all the questions that came in. So I really appreciate all of you talking with us virtually here today, and spending time with us. I know that your time is valuable and you're dealing with a lot of competing priorities right now. So we really appreciate you coming and having this conversation with us. If you're interested in talking to one of the panelists or one of my admissions colleagues or myself after today, please reach out to our University of Rochester Office of Admissions. I'm pointing, like you can see, I'm talking about this right here, and we can connect you with someone who can answer your questions, or with one of the panelists if you want to talk with them more. But thank you so much for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and that you stay safe and healthy.